Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another TMDSAS office hour for the month of June. My name is Suleima, and I am the TMDSAS Support Coordinator. I'll be here to answer any of y'all's questions that y'all may have about applying, the application, if you've already started an application, um, any kind of questions. We have this live Q&A session specifically for that, and be here as long as y'all need it. I encourage you to ask questions. I know that sometimes you can send messages in your portal. You can also give us a call, but you can also utilize this as another avenue to address any questions that you have. I am excited for this cycle. We're hoping to have more of our member institutions join us for these TMDSA's office hours. And for this month, we will host these every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time. And of course, if you can't make it or can't watch it for the entirety of its time, you can always go back and go into our Texas Health Education Service YouTube channel and view any past recordings that we have. Great resource, great information, a lot of insight on the past videos that we've hosted. So far, we have had medical and the dental schools panel hosted on our YouTube channel. So I highly recommend that you take a look at that, especially when it comes to questions about essays, activities. These schools had great information, great insight that they share in those panels. So, of course, you're more than welcome to watch those, as well as tuning in into our Team DSAS office hours every week. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat. In the meantime, I can just quickly go over a few things that we would like to point out. If you have any, just based on the questions that we've received at the office via message or in the phones, we have had a lot of requests to make updates to specific sections in the application. I did want to let y'all know that there are a couple sections that can't be changed after submitting, so that's why we highly recommend that you take a look at that before submitting your application. So we recommend that you download the PDF of your application via your application portal homepage, so that way you can review that, make sure all your spellings, grammar, punctuation is all accurate, that you're not missing any important information such as parent information, siblings, other relatives, and significant others that you would like to add, as well as activities. Those cannot be changed after submitting. And so I wanted to go ahead and link to the approved changes after submitting page that you can take a look at your end. And this link will take you to a table. It'll show you the different sections in the application that can be changed or cannot after submitting. So I highly, highly recommend that you take a look at that. At the top of my head, I know for a fact you cannot make any changes to activities or essays once you submit them. So that is why we recommend that you submit, you take a look at your PDF of your application to make sure that all that information is accurate. There's other sections that you can make changes to after submitting, especially your coursework. So if you have any coursework updates, you must update that as soon as possible, and that is something that can be updated. And I know for a fact something that you can update on your end is if you have any future test dates or any test information regarding your MCAT or your DAT that you have to update, you can actually make that update yourself in the application by going into each of those pages and making changes as needed. So I see that we have a couple questions in the chat now. So let me see what I can pull from here. All right, so I see we have a question here about residency. Yeah, of course, no problem. We're here to help. But I will say that with residency, this does look like your question is regarding specific documents. Um, the insight that I have from our team is to have applicants submit what you have. So anything that is requested from you, such as like pay stubs or specific documents that the application or a team member is asking you, go ahead and upload what you have. If you don't have something, you can always send a message as a reply to that message that was sent to you requesting those documents. If you have any questions specific about those specific documents. Unfortunately, I'm not a residency specialist, so I'm not very knowledgeable in this area to look at specific scenarios or specific documents. I can only help with information that's on the section itself and kind of help guide what that's asking and where you could potentially um, look at entering into that description box that's listed below in that page. So, Nathaniel, I would go ahead and just upload what you have. And if you have any specific questions about those documents, unfortunately, I can't answer them, but you can reply back to that message and just ask those questions, and they will get back to you and letting you know if there's additional documents that may be needed, or if there's any substitutions, or if it's just any information that you think is helpful for them to know as they're reviewing your case. I would also recommend that you insert that into the message. But thanks for tuning in, though. All right, let's see. I have a question here from Sarah. I unfortunately haven't been able to find a clear answer to this question online. For a research experience description, would it be safe to assume admissions would identify techniques like SDS page? I'm assuming this is probably an acronym. If that's correct, I do know based on the school panels that we hosted back in May, the schools did let us know or let everyone know in the live session that they prefer that you write out your acronyms just because not everyone's going to know the type of acronym that you're referring to. So, to avoid any kind of confusion or any kind of yeah, any kind of confusion, not knowing exactly what acronym you're referring to, if you can go ahead and expand it so that way the schools are clear on what your descriptions are and what that activity was. So let me go ahead and link to that. Actually, you can find it on our YouTube channel. So if you go to under EY 2024, we do have the application walkthrough, and we have two medical school panels, and we also have one dental. Um, Great insight. They share a lot of information about this particular question. If this is regarding acronyms, they do answer that. I believe I said what they said, but if not, you can always go back and rewatch it just to be sure. Um, Let me see. The question from Allison. Which appropriate section should we enter our shadowing for dental? The application guide sections, healthcare activities, and dental experience both mention shadowing in the descriptions. Great question. So if it's dental shadowing, based on what the schools have told us on that school panel, it is best to list those under the dental experience. Healthcare activities is more for activities that you have that are not specific to dental. So I'm assuming it's things like maybe helped, you volunteered for a clinic and were doing like the COVID test or something like that. That could be healthcare, since it's not necessarily about dental. And so it wouldn't go into your dental experience, but you could potentially put it under healthcare. Again, activities, is up to the applicant to determine where the best section is or best category to list an activity based on what you want to highlight. Um, for more information about dental experiences specifically, since that is a new section in a new category in the application for this cycle, I recommend that you take a look at that dental school panel. They do offer a lot of insight, especially because we know that that new category could be confusing, considering there's also a healthcare activity, which is where we um, used to tell applicants to enter their dental experiences. So let me go ahead and link it in the chat. And I have my side, so that's why I am looking this way. But this is linked to the dental school panel. And again, the dental school panel, specifically, we did ask them this question about where to enter dental versus healthcare activities. And so they make a good point at making that distinction between what they want to see in those categories. So I highly recommend, Allison, that you take a look at that for additional information. All right, Mark, I see you have two questions. I unfortunately can't answer this one regarding residency. Again, I'm not a residency specialist. Um, and specifics about documents, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to give you much insight. So go ahead and, again, submit what you have based on what's asked of you. If you have any questions about those, you can always reply back to those messages to ask your questions regarding the specific documents that are asked of you. However, I can try to answer this next question of yours, which is about your MCAT. If I submitted an MCAT score and I am retaking at the end of June, will the application be processed currently or will you wait until the scores are returned? Not at all. So we don't need your scores to process your application and to transmit it to the schools. If you have your test date and you want to retake it, make sure that that retake test date is on your application. Make sure you get it on there. That way, whenever your scores are released, it matches up to your application. But again, to answer your question, we will not hold off on sending your application to the schools if we don't have the scores. We won't do that. We'll go ahead and process what you have and send it to the schools, and it becomes available to them. Let's say that your scores don't become available until after that happens, once the schools already have your application, that is okay. Anytime that the schools or anytime that any updates are made to your application once it has already been sent to the schools, they get kind of like a flag system in their end to let them know that there's updates on applications and they can download that new information either every day, every week, just depending on what the schools do on their end and how they set up that process on their end to download new information. It just depends, but either way, they will be notified that there's new information on your application. All right. When selecting to be considered for an MD or MPH program, are there any further applications we need to submit? Does it mean I will be considered for the traditional MD as well? Correct. So, whenever you're in the application under select schools, you will be able to select the schools that you want to apply to. So, once you click on that, it'll prompt you to selecting if you would like to apply to one of their dual degree programs. So if you select the checkbox to the left-hand side under this or right next to the school name, that is the regular MD program. Once you click on that and it pops up with dual degree options that you can also apply to, then that means that you would also be applying, if you select that box as well, you would be applying to MD and the dual degree program. As far as any additional applications, you might want to check with the school itself, like on their website, to see if they have any additional requirements or things that you have to do to be considered for both the MD and the dual degree program. On the Team DSA's application, if you do select the dual degree program, in the essay section, it'll pop up with another essay prompt specific to that dual degree program. So just be on the lookout for that in the essays page. But as far as I know, that's the only thing, the other additional thing that you have to take on the TMDSA's application itself. All right. I have a question from Sam. At what point in the application cycle do you recommend completing Casper? Are primary or secondary applications not reviewed until Casper is completed? That is a great question. So Casper does depend on the school's end. Some schools require it, some do not. And and all the different schools have different timelines for when those need to be completed. Some schools require it to be completed by the deadline, after the deadline, or way before the deadline. So I definitely recommend that you take a look at the schools specifically that you want to apply to see what their information and policies are about Casper. And let me link that in the chat really quick. Like I said, some schools require Casper, some do not, and they all have different timelines for when those are due. So I recommend that you take a look at the schools that you're applying to. Check this link to see if they require Casper or not, and if they do, when. The information that we have is limited to what the schools have provided. So if on that link you don't find a deadline for that Casper, go ahead and contact the schools, check out their website, see what information you can find on when they need the Casper to be submitted by. Depending on that submission date that they need it by, it may be after, during, or before your secondary application. So just take a look at that because I think that could help you kind of get an idea of what your timeline looks like and where you need to focus your attention to at that particular point in the cycle. So unfortunately, it's not a direct answer, but this is the information that we can provide on Casper since that is something that is handled on the school's end. All right, would it be best to hold off on submitting an application if you are retaking your DAT? A great question. So this lies more a little bit on the advising side. I'll try my best, but I definitely recommend that for these particular questions, you can go to your pre-health advising office and kind of get with your pre-health advisor to set like a game plan if you would like to retake your exam, what that means for your application, and kind of setting like goals and deadlines for when you want to complete those things off of your list to make sure that you submit the best application possible. But what I will say is that I believe the DAT, and let me just go to the deadlines page really quick. There is a recommended time for when you should have a DAT submitted. All right, so it is recommended that you take the DAT in the spring or summer prior to applying, but no later than December 1st of the application cycle, since offers of admission go out mid-December. Waiting to take the DAT until the very last day, which would be December 1st, could delay any consideration for admission after the test scores are released. I do know that the DAT, it can take about 4 to 6 weeks for them to release your scores once you release or once you take your exam. It could take that long for you to receive your scores. Um, so I think this would also apply for retaking. Make sure that your test date is at a time when you know you're ready to retake it and make an improvement on that score if that's what you're seeking. But also not waiting until December 1st, because that could cause a delay on them taking action on potentially sending out an acceptance offer to you. Um, in the meantime, for your application, you can go ahead and submit it. Again, we do not need you to have your letters or your scores on the application in order for you to submit. Our team will go ahead and process your primary application since the letters of evaluation and scores are a separate process. They're not processed at the same time. So they'll go ahead and process your application as it is. And if you are retaking your DAT and that test date is not currently listed on your application, you can always go back into the DAT page and add the test date under planned DATs. So you can do that on your end. And if you have any questions or if you're not able to make that change on your end, you can always send a message to the in the application portal and send a message so that way one of our team members can go ahead and make that update for you if you're unable to. So I hope that answers your question, Allison. Unfortunately, there's only so much that we can provide when it comes to advising, just because we're not pre-health advisors, but we can try our best to provide as much as information as we can. All right. I will apply late or I'm thinking this is in regards to applying late to the MD program. Late September, early October for UT Southwestern. Deadline is November 1st. Just wondering if I'm risking a lower chance of admissions because I am not able to apply early. Um, Che, if you could clarify your question, I think you're asking about one of UT Southwestern's deadlines. You perhaps could be asking about early decision program, but I'm not quite sure. So if you can, go ahead and just clarify what you're asking. That way I can do my best to address your question. But you did mention November 1st. That is the deadline for the TMDSAS primary application. All right, so for the college coursework section of the application, if I have two entries of 3 credit hours from two different AP exams, do I put one entry of 6 credit hours? I would ask if this is, do they put it all together as an AP credit equals 6 credit hours, or does your transcript actually list out the two AP exams? It's important to know that because while we do allow you to enter in your AP credits, they must be reflected on your transcript. And unfortunately, if it's a lump sum, it will not be accepted. So a lot of cases, a lump sum is seen on California transcripts or California school transcripts. It'll say something like AP exam or AP credit equals 12 hours, 6 hours, but there's no actual course breakdown. So prefix, course number, course name, credit hours that were awarded to that AP credit that are equivalent to what your main institution offers. So if you can clarify if it is listed that way, or if your AP credits do have actual course breakdown. For the healthcare activity section, all of my activities are dental related. Should I put them should I put all of them in my dental experience and leave my healthcare activities section empty? Great question, Kim. Like I mentioned earlier, I would say that the best resource for making this determination between the dental experience or the healthcare is to take a look at that dental school panel. We did ask them this question because it was an area of confusion for our dental applicants since this is a new category. And we wanted to make sure that they address this question to ensure that um, the applicants were entering the information that they wanted to see in those specific sections, the specific categories. So take a look at that. From my understanding, is that your dental experiences would go under dental, and healthcare activities is reserved for anything else that's healthcare related, but it's not dental. So that's as much as information as I can provide, but I definitely recommend that you take a look at that school panel. Because I do remember we asked them that question for sure. We had a lot of questions as soon as the application opened. So I understand it could be confusing or a little nerve-wracking not knowing where to put that dental experience. But I would say a good rule of thumb is if it's a dental experience, go ahead and list it under dental, and anything else could be under healthcare. But definitely check out that school panel to confirm. If my dentist letter of recommendation has already been received and approved, does that mean my individual evaluator has already completed all of the letter of recommendation requirements and it won't be rejected? Correct. So received means you received it, approved means that it met the letter requirements. So the letter did have the date, did have your name or your TMDSA's ID number. It had the evaluator's signature, their contact information like phone number, email address, and or both for that one, and a letterhead on the letter. So yeah, it was received and approved. So no need to worry about that letter anymore. All right, Jay, thank you for clarifying your question. So the question is, if I'm applying close to the deadline date, will I have a lower chance of admission because fewer spots are remaining towards the end of the admission cycle? So in short, yes. There is an application timeline that I would like to share with you guys. So let me try to find that for you guys. I believe this is on our deadlines and important timelines page. All right, so I actually found a video explaining what the meaning of applying early means because the common piece of advice that applicants receive about applying is that you have to apply early. However, sometimes applying early is not the best time for an applicant, depending on your journey, your application. Um, Experience and things that you want to enter into your application. So I will go ahead and post a link to the applying early video. This actually helped me understand that nuance because when I first started, I heard this a lot and I wasn't sure exactly how to address this question. But this video explains what the difference between applying early versus at the end of the cycle could mean for an applicant. So let me go ahead and link that below. And this is looking at specifically the deadlines that we have with the letters, scores, the application itself. So it looks specifically at our timeline for TMDSES in regards to that time period in which we have a lot of applicants submitting at the beginning of the cycle versus not that many towards the end. So, if you apply close to the deadline, as long as you submit your application by November 1st, you will be considered for the cycle because it was submitted on time. It was submitted before the deadline. Now, there will be fewer spots remaining for interviews. As y'all know, you have to have your primary application submitted. Also, a lot of schools do require secondary application. So, if you have schools that need you to submit that before your primary application, you might be missing out on that opportunity. Some schools do require that to be submitted on November 1st, some after the deadline on November 15th, I believe. But again, it just depends on the schools, what they do on their end. So definitely one, I'd recommend checking out the schools that you want to apply to and see what their secondary application deadline is. I think that's a good way to kind of figure out when you should probably aim to submit your application and if you're okay to submit it by the deadline date. Another thing to consider is when you're ready. So, if you're not ready at this time to submit your application, perhaps you need some additional help with your pre health advisor to help you figure out how to fill out the application, or you're waiting on a few things. I recommend that you also take that into consideration because you want to make sure that you submit a quality application, not just a rushed application, because it won't really get you far. You want to make sure that you submit the best version of yourself and the best version of that application as possible. Um, so yeah, you do have to have those secondaries in. You do have to have an interview for consideration for acceptance. So yes, at that point in the cycle, let me take a look at the deadlines. So I know for medical schools, interviews begin going out, or invitations for interviews start as of August 1st. And they go through February, I believe the beginning of February, because after that we will get into ranking and match and whatnot. So the schools will definitely be done with their interviews. I would probably say by the end of January. So once you submit your application in November, um, yes, you still would be considered because it's submitted before the deadline. However, because all of the interview spots from August, September, and October have already been taken up, that does leave with fewer spots open for interview slots that you could be considered for. Typically, what I've heard from the schools is if you are submitting towards the end of the application cycle, you're looking at being a very, 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 very competitive applicant because at that point, there's not a lot of spots open for consideration. So yeah, I just recommend that if you can talk to a pre-health advisor to kind of figure out what this timeline looks like for you, because everyone's timeline is different. It's not the same for everyone. Not everyone will be able to apply early, and it's not for everyone. If you don't have a pre-health advisor at your institution, I can link to the NAP. So that's an organization of National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions, something like that. But I can link that down below. Basically, they have a couple of volunteer advisors that volunteer their time to help applicants who don't have a pre-health advisor at their school. So let me go ahead and link that below. All right, so the link is in the chat. Take a look at that if you don't have access to a pre-health advisor at your school. That way you can be set up with a volunteer pre-health advisor that can kind of help you in tailoring your specific um, journey with the cycle and to figure out the best time to submit whenever you're ready, of course. I hope that helps. Again, we can only offer so much information about advising because that is best to ask pre-health advisors, especially when it comes to tailoring your application and making sure that you have a timeline that works specifically for you. I hope this helps. I did try my best, but let me know if you have any questions or any follow-up thoughts to that. And I know it was a long explanation, so let me know if you need any clarification on anything. We do have a follow-up question from Kim. For my previous AP credit, my two different AP exams both transferred as two sections of the 3 credit hours of the same course, but I cannot repeat the same course. Okay. In this case, my best recommendation is to send a screenshot of what this section of your official transcript looks like. Send it to info@tmdsas.com. That way, our team members can take a look at that. And transcripts look very different from school to school. So sometimes it can be very hard to see if they do have a course breakdown, if they do not. So go ahead and send a screenshot of what this looks like to info@tmdsas.com, and I'll list it below. So it's in the chat. That way you can send that screenshot to that email address, and we can have a team member take a look at that for you and provide better guidance. Sometimes it's just really hard to kind of give some guidance based on like not being able to see that transcript. So it is best to send us that via email. Okay, let me see where we're at. Okay. It's a question from Sophia. Good afternoon. I am actively involved in multiple research projects, but they are all tied to my current employment. Can I at least list these projects separately under the research activity section? I recommend that you take a look at the guidance in the application guide regarding the activities and how to list those if those need to be listed separately or not. The reason for that is a lot of activities can vary on how you participated in those, and sometimes listing them out altogether or separately helps to best distinguish what that activity looked like in regards to your hours and making sure that it fits on your timeline, like the way you want it to be. Um, yeah, I would say, yeah, ultimately it is up to the applicant to determine that if it's best to list it separately or once altogether. So let me see what we have on the guide. Okay, so we have, yeah, ultimately it is going to be up to the applicant depending on what that looked like, if there was changes over time or how long those breaks were. So take a look at the information that's in the guide and also the school panel, depending on if you're a dental or medical applicant. That way, you know which school panel to watch. But they do have insightful information about these instances where it's research, but also if you have an activity that you took over a long period of time, and depending on how those breaks were. So take a look at that, Sophia. And if you do have any further questions after reviewing that material, send us a message in your TMDSA's application portal so that way we can have a team member take a look at that specifically in your case. Okay, question from Ellie. Hello. I enrolled in courses for a TAing general chem and microbiome course. They are listed in the chem and bio course areas. So would these be classified as their respective sciences or non-science? So this is another area where we also recommend that it is up to you to use your best judgment based on the information provided for coursework. I'll go ahead and link that as well. And I know that a lot of times it's very scary to think that we're kind of telling you that it's on you to select and make that determination. I would like for you guys to not think of this as such a scary um, part of applying. And the reason for that is because specifically with this question, with coursework, you'll have, based on the information that we provide under coursework definitions, and I'll link that below before I continue with my thought. So coursework definitions. Okay, so the link that I just entered into the chat is a link to the coursework definitions and classifications. So once you go to that link and you expand the box, when you click on the plus sign, it'll give you a table that shows the different topics that must be covered in a course for it to be considered as a bio, chemistry, physics, all the prerequisite areas. So we ask applicants to take a look at that and based on that information provided to make the best determination possible on your end to code your courses. We leave that up to you because there's no penalty. You will not be penalized as those are incorrect. Again, it's just to help you kind of figure out what your course areas need to be when entering your courses. Once you submit your application during processing, our team looks at your coursework. They review all the courses to make sure the course areas are accurate based on the information that you were also viewing, such as the coursework definitions, and so those are adjusted if needed. Then your application is transmitted to the schools and you're able to view your PCR. Your PCR tells you what courses counted towards those prerequisite areas. And that's where you can see how your courses were classified, or you can even go into the college coursework page to see those course areas. And again, we don't penalize you guys if you have these incorrect. So please don't stress out on trying to figure out what course area it should go, and if it doesn't go into the correct one, there's no repercussion. So yeah, just please use this information that I provided in the link. It's what our team uses to look at your courses as well. Um, so just do your best. You will not be penalized. The schools will not get upset with you. If you find out once you look at your PCR that you have hour deficiencies, that's okay. Yes, schools do have the application at that point, but that will not prevent them from extending an interview invite or considering or looking at your application. So please don't stress out. Don't stress out about this section. Don't stress out about the activities either, because again, that is something that only you know what your activities look like. So don't stress out if you misplace an activity in a category and you think, oh, maybe I should have placed it in another one. It's fine. It's okay. You know your activities. You enter your descriptions, however it is that you want to show what that activity was about. So I know that those are two areas that can be stressful, but please don't stress. It's going to be okay. And Ellie, let me know if that helped you with your question. And if not, just let me know. Okay, for the employment section, since I must re-enter for every period my job was held, could I copy and paste my descriptions if it's the same job? Um, I'm assuming you're referring to if you list your employment under current and planned. If that's the case, we recommend that you don't copy and paste. And the reason for that is the schools don't necessarily want to see the same activity listed multiple times with the same description. In this case, what we recommend is listing what you're currently doing if you have it under current. And under planned, you could potentially list what you would like to do or accomplish in that activity in the future. Um, Again, the school panels are a great resource to use since the schools do answer a lot of questions regarding the activities and want to enter for those descriptions. But again, it's going to be up to you how you want to enter that. Okay, and this one is jobs that are not contingent with school, small business, for example. Should I still re-enter a description entry for every period the job was held? Um, I would be careful with this just because, again, you don't want to copy and paste the same thing over and over again if you have it in multiple entries. So just do your best with making sure that you have the information that you want to talk about that activity for that specific entry, and you limit how much you copy and paste you do. Again, this if that's not helpful with that particular part that you're asking, I highly recommend that you take a look at the school panels because they address a lot of concerns when it comes to activities. And it is ultimately up to the applicant to decide how to best enter that into the chronology or the different activities that are listed in your personal biography section. Again, don't stress about it though. It's going to be okay. Okay, I have to enroll in a course for research credit, so that course is listed 4 times for each semester I was doing research. Should I say no when asked if that was the last time taken? No. The answer to that is going to be yes. So based on what's in the guide, the guidance for last time taken, and I'll list it below. So the information that is listed here for last time taken um, says that you must answer yes if you took this course only once and do not plan to retake it. The course was repeated for additional credit, but not for a better grade. Common examples are physical education, course, band, or research slash thesis. So yes, this would be yes for last time taking each of those 4 times that you did your research course. Okay. Another activities question. Are we allowed to repeat employment under dental and healthcare activities? My health advisor says yes, but the application says not to repeat. Great question. So yes, you can repeat that because if your activity was your dental experience and it was also employment, you can go ahead and list it twice. So once under your dental, once under your employment category. Just make sure you don't copy and paste. Your description should be different. So your description for your dental and your healthcare experience should only reflect that, and then your employment would only reflect the employment aspect of that activity. Again, this is allowed because a lot of times we have our dental and medical applicants whose employment was also part of their healthcare and or dental activities. Just make sure that you use a description that only talks about that specific category. So that way there's a distinction. Okay, if you have multiple dean's list slash president's list recognitions, do we enter them as one entry or many entries with the same description? Again, it's going to be up to you how you want to best list that in your application. Do you want to go ahead and lump it all together? Do you want to enter it separately? It's going to be up to you. I've seen a lot of examples where the applicant will just list it once and encompass the whole time that they've received that award, so from freshman and senior year, and in the description box, they entered which semesters or which quarters they specifically received that award for. It's one way to do it. Ultimately, it's going to be up to you, though. This is a great question. From Che, I'm curious about why applicants have to wait until requested to submit transcripts. Great question. So as of EY 2021, and that's just the information that I have, the process for asking for transcripts changed, and that was part of it had to do with COVID, but also to make sure that we were only requesting applicants who were accepted or had been interviewed to submit those transcripts. As you all know, having those transcripts submitted to TMDSAS does cost you money. So we wanted to make sure that only we really only need transcripts from dental and medical applicants who have been accepted. So once those dental and medical schools let us know that you've been accepted, at that point, TMDSAS will then send you a transcript email request with letting you know that we need your transcripts and how to submit those to us. Um, Veterinary applicants, it'll be triggered once the schools let us know that you've been interviewed. So only until then do you need to submit your transcripts. The reason for that is because transcripts, TMDCs only needs them to confirm that what you entered in your application is what's showing up on those official transcripts to make sure there's no discrepancies, you didn't leave any courses out that you didn't want us to see. So that's the reason why TMDSAS requests you to submit your transcripts. But we only need that from applicants who have been accepted, if they are dental or medical applicants, or if they're veterinary applicants who have been interviewed, because that's when the schools need to see those transcripts on your application. So it's kind of an effort to make sure that we only receive transcripts from those who do need to submit them, and also for those who do not need to submit them to save money, because those can be costly, especially if you attended multiple institutions, and also not to bombard our processing team because they only need to be processing transcripts that are requested. So again, don't worry about those until you've been accepted if you're a dental or medical applicant, or if you've been interviewed if you are a veterinary applicant. Up until then, don't worry about them. Whenever that applies to you, be on the lookout from an email from TMDSAS, and it'll come from the info@tmdsas.com email address. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, it's a great question. We always get this a lot. Every cycle, we still have applicants to submit transcripts, but we highly recommend that you don't do that, just because they will not be kept on file if you submit them before that request. And then that would, if you need them later, you will have to submit those again, spend more money, and we don't want you to do that. But yeah, thank you all for submitting y'all's questions. I see that I got through all of them. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad that I was able to help you guys and kind of understand this process a little bit more. I know it's stressful, but I hope that by having this platform here, we're able to address questions that you guys have, make it a little less scary, a little less stressful, and overall just helpful in this process. So, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you all for engaging and asking all your great questions. Great, 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 great questions. Again, if you have any further follow ups or additional concerns, you can always send us a message in your TMDSAS application portal. That's actually the best way to communicate with the TMDSAS support team now that you are a current applicant. That way, whenever you send a message, it is connected to your application, and our team can take a look at that and review your application if needed, if there's a question with the application itself. Again, thank you all for attending. We'll see you guys next week. We'll have another office hour next Tuesday at 1 p.m., same time, same place. So have a great day, everyone, and good luck.